First Smoke family, we got Karmaglass on today.
Let's go, First Smoke family. Can't wait to share the vibes with you and tell you about the glass tribe.
Man, we get into the state of the glass industry. We talk about THCA and the Carolinas. We get into so much. This was a blast. I don't want to ruin it, but go to FSOTD.com if you want to get hooked up like family with every single sponsor. Shout out to Elevated and HEV, our newest sponsor. If you've ever wanted to try a new nutrient company, you've heard of HEV. Yes, you're talking LA Family Farms. You're talking some of the biggest high tech, some of the grows we've been in, super dope. Man, on and on. There's been so many grows we've walked through. Shout out HEV Elevated for coming on board, our brand new sponsor. Raw rolling papers, Fave and under canopy lighting, and Slap Hub. If you need packaging, Slap Hub is also one of our new sponsors. Yeah, it's starting to be a good year. Let's get into it.
I could easily knock so many people, and that could have been a real part of my path. You know what I mean? Frank Sinatra, man, like we gotta do it our way, dude. Collaboration over time, I have found that the success to collaboration is the same success. There's no one else in that room.
First Smoke family, man, it's so dope. We finally got here. We have one of the glass blowers that we all look up to, someone that we really love, the artistry and the amount of craft that goes into these pieces. Hundreds of hours, tons of work. And I have so many questions about the glass industry right now, the glass industry over the years, how collaborations work. I mean, on and on. We're finally going to get there today. And everyone on here, I know you've smoked out of your favorite rig. We all used to go there and we would pick out our favorite glass blower. Everyone has a favorite glass blower. Well, today we have Karmaglass on, man. Thank you for making First Smoke of the day, bro.
I appreciate you having me, man.
Dude, come on.
It's great to be out here, man.
I'm such a fan of the artistry behind glass. And to have you on today, man, it's honestly our honor, finally.
Well, I appreciate you reaching out, man, and making it happen. And you know, it's an honor to be the first to represent this deep, subculture within a subculture is what I like to call it, because, we know that so many of us love to puff, but then how many of us have been indoctrinated into the subculture and know how deep the glass roots run in our culture. So it's an honor to be asked on and to be the leading the charge in that way, man. There's so much to talk about.
We're tied at the hip. Tell me glass blowers and growers and hash makers aren't tied at the hip.
100%, man. Yeah, we were just even discussing that. It's like when hash and herb is up, glass is up, and when hash and herb is down, glass is down, because, these are the vessels that we create to consume the finest cannabis that we can all cultivate, and as craft turns into artistry and that artistry becomes celebrated, there's no finer way to celebrate your artistry than with to dovetail it with another person's hard work that illuminates everything you've been up to, whether that's the terp content or whether that's, the how things smoke. It's a no-brainer to have a nice piece in the collection, I feel like.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was telling you that one of the things that was passed down to me was my mentor. Every time we'd have a fresh crop, he would literally be like, let's go to and that was the only time he would go to the head store other than to buy papers, was to go break in a new piece of glass every time we'd have a harvest. And that became this tradition that was passed on to all the guys around me, where they would almost do the same thing. And something we all loved was rigs to smoke out of, especially like you could always, I still think about my favorite ones over the years that broke that I watched. I still to this day, if I could have one rig back, I know exactly. I want to get into the state of the glass industry right now, because I remember when there were 60, 70,000, you were hearing these numbers like, dude, what are you talking about? That's a brand new fucking Mercedes Benz.
100%. 100%, man. Things, as things got extrapolated and we were given an opportunity to create in a more free way as time went on, we've had larger and larger concepts and budgets put on us. Now, I can't take credit because a lot of this pushing and progression comes from the true, what I call the triple OGs. The people that have been in this for 20, 25 years and have seen it all the way through.
Who are the leaders in that space that you would say, like a few of them that you would name that are like a lot of guys look up to?
Yeah, I think that when we look at the leaders, it's hard to pick. Everyone's got a different Mount Rushmore of glassblowers, but
it's like artists.
Yeah, 100%. But there are some artists that I believe are what we would call undeniable, and that's like Nas. You know what I mean? And that's like Jay-Z and Biggie. It's like we can say whatever we want about East Coast, West Coast, but we have to salute when someone puts in the work, And for me, right off the top of my head, those people are Banjo. Those people are, Mothership, Scott Depp. Scott Depp had a huge influence into me following the glass path and to showing up and to wanting to be seen. His piece called Carnival influenced a lot of us. And it was in the This Is Not a Pipe book, I believe. But I just remember seeing that one online, not even in that book, but online. And, it's just all the technique that was present and all of the coalescing of that technique. It began to dissolve the technique, because technique layered on itself is sure beautiful, but once the art has a chance to say something, these are the guys that I look to as my true inspiration. So yeah, Scott Depp, Banjo, and then there's a whole host of other names that we could throw in there, but these are guys that I look at as pinnacles of the industry. Darby Home, people that have been holding up their tribes within the glass community for multiple decades.
Something interesting as you're explaining this, I think Mothership is a collective where a lot of the other guys you hear is a name.
That's right.
That's very different, I guess.
100%,
I never really realized that until you started talking about it, that we hear all these names and it's artist names, and then you hear Mothership and you go, wow, that's the first time I had heard of a collective not being branded as a person.
That speaks to, the name speaks to that concept where they are the mothership. They have tractor beamed up so many talented individuals, and people have come and gone through the mothership. It's almost like the Earth, Wind and Fire, or the Grateful Dead of
the comedy store.
The comedy store, where there's a revolving cast of characters, but you can count on the fact that behind the controls is Scott Depp. You know what I mean? And he is the true Lizard King. He holds a true lineage of psychedelic and amazing thought constructs that have made it to our medium. He's responsible for so many designs, and he has brought forth so many people that have been responsible for other designs, that he is definitely the captain of that mothership.
Man, you brought up another good point. How much of it's up here?
Man,
how much of it's in your head before, you know what I'm saying, versus technique?
You know what? It's funny because 99% of it, you know what I mean? Like, think back to the oldest thought philosophies in Zen and in, Aristotle and some of these guys that, have put philosophy onto us as humanity. We think, therefore we are. And so, most of what we experience in through space and time started in someone's head, and was like, I wonder if I could do this. And then instead of sitting around on their ass, they went and did this, And so,
wow, yeah. Recyclers, we start to just every year. And it's such an interesting, almost like sport, I guess, or artistry. It's tough to categorize it because you see new players rise, and you see new forms of glassblower where you're like, oh, that's different than anything I've seen yet. And then you see waves then crash and become where other glassblowers take the inspiration and then run with that.
100%. And I stand to testify to that exact concept because, I've been blowing glass for 15 years at this point, and I have developed this psychedelic rainbow pattern that people have come to know and love. And that has been going on for the last 5 to 6 years. Whereas, people say, oh, wow, you really blew up, but it's like, it's 10 years or 15 years to become an overnight success, and some of these forefathers that have paved out the road that I get to openly walk on, and one of those cats, we were, you had mentioned that you had spent some time in Colorado and that your introduction to the glass scene came from a legend, and that's Nate Myers, right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
And so he's the spaceman, you know, he's gone out and he's done the exploring for a lot of us, and he's brought back the wisdom. And one thing I didn't realize as I started down this rainbow path was, you know, I made this pattern.
Rainbow path.
Yeah,
I love that.
I like made this pattern, and I was like going to make it for a summer. I had brought these materials were so rare and hard to come by, some of these colors. And so I was going to have a summer of love, and I was just going to make this pattern for a summer. But quickly, the humans that collected my art started to reflect back, like, what if you worked with this guy? What if you worked with this guy? And so I hadn't even ever thought of the fact that a part of a glass path or, you know, my path could be creating this rainbow, this psychedelic rainbow patterning. But as I started to follow the path and show up and say yes, and I started to see some of my elders like Nate Myers who have that ability to project their imagery onto the glass. Blueberry is another notable glassblower who paved out the path that I walk on.
Shout out Blueberry 503, right?
Shout out Blueberry and shout out Nate Myers for sure, man. I can't even say I've really even met either of those two people. But you know, if the vibes get out there, let it be known the respect goes deep.
I've watched from afar, and I had a Nate Myers piece for a while. I sold it to a hash maker, actually. I had it for maybe 6 months, and he just loved it so much. He offered me, I couldn't refuse. I was like,
Sure.
that's, you know, like, dude, that's like way more
Made
than I
you
even
enough,
paid.
but you couldn't refuse.
But like still a rig that when I think back on like my highest highs, that was one of them where you're like, wow, that was an exceptional rig right
Yes.
there. Man, that's such an interesting path because you say you're almost like branding yourself through your art. And then now when you collab, because we're looking at your Buck collab, I can see you right in there. Right? You're like, oh yeah, that's you.
Now, Buck is one that I've actually never collaborated with.
What's the top one on your profile right now?
But the most recently posted one, let's see. I posted a bluegrass collaboration yesterday.
Okay, no, I wouldn't know that.
It's not that.
I love the lamps.
You love the lamps, man, because hey.
It was Darby. It was a Darby. It was like 6 down or 8 down.
No, you know what? No, you know what?
You have so many collabs.
It's something that we could pull up, and it's funny because, you know, out of all the people I've collaborated with so many people.
Yeah, bro.
Buck and Darby are two people I've never collaborated with. And I would love to do that. You know what I mean? But that just the opportunity hasn't come up. I actually, I did have Darby. Me and him were scheduled to collaborate in 2020. And it was for my show here in LA at Lifted Veil Gallery. It was called Karma is Real. And
that's dope.
it was a fun one, man. And I was collaborating up in all of those guys' neck of the woods. And as I got towards Darby's house, the world caught on fire. I don't know if you remember the wildfires of 2020 that were so bad.
Madness.
And so like the morning that I was getting ready to push off towards his neck of the woods, there was ash raining down from the sky. And so that was like the one time where me and Darby were two ships crossing each other in the night. I was supposed to link up with him, but I'm trying to think about which one that you're thinking about. Can you describe it to me? And
I mean, it was like a big stand up, almost like recycler looking.
Oh, was it a samurai?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So that's with Oil Brothers, and Oil Brothers is an amazing artist out of Chicago.
Yeah.
And Matt is a true warrior, man, that stands to his structures that he's building now, because Matt came into the scene as a collector and he started to appreciate Mothership and started to appreciate Quave. And then he decided to get a torch and he started to jump on it. Oh. And then he, over a 12-year period, he's just absolutely sliced and diced, man. He's an incredible dude with an incredible passion for the scene and for builds. So, yeah.
I got to ask, man, because so much of your art is collaboration. And in my life and in cannabis, very few times collaboration has worked out for the best of both people. It's because that it has to be the right person. They have to be on, like so many factors involved.
That's right.
And now you're talking about glass where there's kind of a market that goes up and down. It definitely isn't just set prices.
Yeah.
And so how does that, you're the first person I've ever really got to ask this. How does that work when you're sitting there collabing with someone on a rig that's going to sell for 25, 20 grand, 18, 20, thousands and thousands of dollars. And maybe you guys are doing 4 or 5 pieces or multiple, maybe a big piece and a few. How does that work, man?
Well, I find good collaboration over time. I have found that the success to collaboration is the same success to collaboration in business outside of glass art, and the same success to collaboration in humanity outside of business. Well, dealing with your spouse, dealing with friends, because ultimately, if there's not somebody to hold the line of patience and of, respect, then things can get out of hand real quick, And so one of the best things that I feel like I do is logistics. And that's why my collaborative path has been so, I guess you could say, prolific, because if you're going to sell luxury goods and luxury items, luxury art, it should come with luxury service, and if you've ever purchased any high-end fashion or any high-end vehicles, that when you go to Chrome Hearts, when you go to Louis Vuitton, it's you and the sales representative. There's no one else in that room, and there's all kinds of things that come with that, and they're very self-evident. There's even, you can put it on a credit card. There's financing. There's all kinds of things and as the glass scene, one thing we may be guilty of, and, the cannabis scene, is guilty of a little bit, but especially in the glass scene, is the maturity to step into business in a way that makes clients feel appreciated and seen in a way that you would at a dealership or that you would in going to a Chrome Hearts store.
So, and let me ask, are you in reference to some of these glass galleries where when you go in there, similar to the one in Malibu that they had honey drop?
Okay, I remember that one. Yeah,
certain ones where when you do go in there, you feel like, wow, this is something special.
It's an elevated experience. And so a lot of what comes with my art, the hidden hand is impeccable customer service. I like to think that one of the things that's dead in our world is customer service. You spend $4,000 on some incredible electronics. They don't work. You got to talk customer service. Now you're over in India. You can't really understand. You don't feel appreciated. You're wondering kind of why you spent so much, but you did need this technology, but why did you spring for, and so one thing that as an art collector myself, and I've collected so many different mediums of art, the artists that I tended to continue to support were the ones that made me feel like my money wasn't just going into a big hollow, empty hallway, Mm-hmm. And so I speak to this because that comes back to financing. It comes back to curation. It's one thing to say like, oh, we sell $10,000 pieces of art. But to me, as an art collector, first, it feels kind of yucky to just sell a piece of art just to sell a piece of art, And so I've had many experiences where over space and time, I've had a piece that was very significant to me and a collaborating artist, or to me, and I had multiple offers come in, and I've taken the lower offer because it's more important to me to curate a piece into a collection that might never just flip it, you know what I mean, or might appreciate it, and so. And furthermore, that's going to be someone that I develop an inherent relationship with. I don't, not that I'm picking and choosing who I'm doing that with, but I want to make sure that I'm investing my time, my continued time, into this client in a way that makes everything feel good. Because my grandfather owned and operated a bicycle shop in Princeton, New Jersey, and he had a business, saying that he shared with me, which was like, when you make a deal, everyone should feel elevated and everyone should feel like it is a good deal. And through selling high-end art, that's going to be something that is a difficult needle to weave. And so that's where, that's one thing that I do really well. I'm able to show up and I'm able to make sure that, as I'm rolling through and creating different level pieces with people, the pieces will have already curated ideas before I come to town. Not only what we're making and how we're creating, but possibly what collection this might go into and what setting that this piece could speak the highest.
We're here, we made it. The mecca of packaging, Slab Hub Los Angeles. First Smoke family, no matter what your demands and needs are, custom bags, designs, branding, logo, marketing, 3D imagery. Doesn't matter if it's jars or bags, they design everything in-house and produce it right here in Los Angeles. I'm right here on the cutting room floor of Slab Hub LA, where your vision becomes reality. Whether it's custom Mylars, themed packaging, doesn't matter. They've always had me and Pack Gods covered, so they got you covered. Your First Smoke family. So use the code FSOTD and get hooked up. Right here in LA, they're designing the best packaging you've seen around the world. This is where we go. This is where you should go. FSOTD is the code to get you hooked up. Slab Hub to LA.
See, I love that. So it's not like, in the art form, this is something I think so many smokers, we buy glass. We don't think about this at like the back end of like, okay, two glass blowers want to make a piece together that's going to end up selling for tens of thousands of dollars. It's not just like, hey bro, it's literally you guys planning out like, what's the color palette? Are we doing recycle? What's the actual function of the piece?
Hours and hours go into any piece that I have participated in.
What's that like with you, man? Tell me, like, so you're going to collab with someone.
Yep.
And you want to do something different. You're like, this person's specialty is something I'm not used to.
Yep.
What's that conversation like?
Well, it just depends on if we're together at a trade show and we're rubbing elbows and we're realizing that we should really blend our styles. It depends on if we're being brought together by a collector. I might have a collector approach me and say, look, Karma, I'm so in love with, let's say Pinky Brutes. I'm here in San Diego working with my boy Pinky Brutes. He's an incredible Mexican-American glass artist that really has attached his expression to his culture. And someone might come to me and say, yo, you and Pinky are getting down. I'd love to stick in the 12 to 15 range. And then I might come to Pinky and I might say, okay, hey, listen, I've noticed that you've just released a new style. What about if we did this, And then he might say, well, you know what? That's not enough effort, because if he's going to spend that much money, we're going to want to ball him out, And so he might put me on course, and then alternatively, he might have an idea that I say, oh man, if we're going to do full reticello throughout the entire piece, that's a very elevated expression of my line work. That might be, we might need to get a little bit more, and so then we'll reflect that back to the collector, and then I'll take a deposit, and from that deposit, then I'll go ahead and just keep them up to date throughout the, through the experience. And that's something that has gone either away from the glass industry or never showed up, is that kind of, 100% communication. I answer 150 messages a day, at a minimum.
Even just that, you have a dartboard and you're shooting for the middle of it, and you having that communication right there where you're like, oh, I want to stay in between this range. And then you basically flipping techniques and being like, what's worth it in this range where we can put something, we can push against the ceiling, but also do something different and collaborative, which is like, I don't think people understand how much thought process goes in.
No.
Because now I'm starting to realize as we're talking.
No. And then the curtain gets pulled back one node further with my expression where, people might see a 2D representation of what I'm doing and they think they might understand. But now I'm out here in San Diego away from my family. I've bought a plane ticket. I've bought hotel rooms. I'm having to, either, eat boiled eggs and tuna fish in my hotel or have a bill to eat out, And so as I stack up that bill, what a lot of people don't realize, they go, wow, I just gave Karma and Pinky $8,000. They're going to make a recycler. And I came to Pinky's house and then I damn near broke even. You know what I mean? I get to the point where I have to make it make sense in the budget where I go, okay, how can I show up and be present and make something that's expressive and unique? And so I think what a lot of people don't even realize even further is like, oh, Karma's paying. They just see me posting from Maine, posting from here, posting from there, but they don't realize like, yes, as a matter of fact, your funding this piece has made it so that, this collaborating artist, is at their house. One. Yeah. And they're at their house. You know what I mean? And so there's a lot of moving parts and logistics that collectors have no idea go into these expressions,
No, you don't. And then that's just to get there and to collaborate. So it's like, oh, your favorite two artists. Cause like as someone who's bought glass. And so you're like, oh, cool. They collabed. You have no clue what went into the hours. And then even trying to figure out, like the function, because so
100%.
many people have their own techniques of the style they use. And I'm sure sometimes it blends, and I'm sure sometimes it's not as easy to figure out, like, how is this going to work for we're both going to be represented here.
100%, man. 100%. And I've had times where we got to town ready to cook, and, you know, we didn't have anything planned out. And then there was like 2 days of like, well, it's like, we should just like we're at a stalemate here of what feels right. Let's, and then that's a good time. That's only happened a few times, but anytime you're stuck, even if it's not for a few days, even if it's just for a few hours, that's a great time as an artist to introduce the catalyst, you know, and the catalyst can be the joint, the dab, the catalyst can be the long walk. Like, bro, let's just hit it. Let's say, like, what do you do around here? You fish? Let's hit the creek. You know what I mean? And let's just get to know each other, because oftentimes that kind of stagnation comes from a lack of a dialogue, you know, and a lack of ability to just communicate ideas readily. And so, yeah, man, like I've had times where I get to town and it's like, you know what? It's time to have a meal. Let's just have a meal, bro, because we got to get to know each other, and this has got to feel right, because nothing is worse than forced expression, you know?
So true.
You know, you don't want it to just look like, I never want my expressions to look like a cookie cutter thing, you know? And oftentimes I've had it to where, you know, because some of my collector base leans into some of the artists I've worked with in the past, there's been times I've been brought with the same artist multiple times, and we have to really sit down and think like, okay, how are we going to make this one different from the last? Because the last thing we want to do is replicate anything, you know? But alas, you know, if you look at those expressions that I've worked with other artists and you look them side by side, it's like, I'm really proud of how we've been able to differentiate these things. And obviously, ultimately, these things do come from a desire from the community. Like I like to think that I'm like a good reggae band, or like the Grateful Dead, you know? I have this inclusiveness in my tribe where everyone knows that we can go different places to achieve exclusiveness, but you will see a $50,000 piece and a $2,000 and a $500 piece all together on the same table, and all those people coming together, you know, and really appreciating the expression. And so that's what I loved about the Dead when I first saw him, you know, rest in peace, Bob Weir, you know, like, dude, I got to my first Rat Dog show when I was 17, and I'll never forget. I saw this heavy set black woman dancing with a skinny white cowboy dude, and I'm looking at this goofy pair of people that are just all gyrating, and I, you know, elbow my buddy. And I'm like, look at these goofers, and he's like, oh yeah, and he looks around and he looks back and he goes, you know what the only difference between all these cats out here and you are right now? And I said, what's that? And he said, I think you're the only one judging. He goes, look around. Ooh. And everyone was just enjoying themselves and dancing. And
it's a good friend.
It clicked me right into gear. Yeah. I was like, it's time to dance, you know? And then I found my expression through going to see Dead shows, and it never felt exclusive. Even on the days where I didn't show up as my best self at a Dead show, everyone's come on in here, man. And so that's the energy that I'd love to bring to the cannabis community, man. Like, that's what brought us all to the dance, is like some homie wasn't stingy with his joint. He was like, bro, you look cool. You know what I mean? At a concert, like, you know, like went to Cypress Hill, you know, you went to Bone Thugs, and someone was like, oh, bro, I don't care that you're a skinny little white kid. Like, get over here, you know? And so it's like that kind of inclusiveness is something that I'm not going to say that's gone away, but it's definitely something that moves in waves, right? We see these cyclical moments, you know? And so I want to try to capture that moment, you know, with my tribe, because we've already been doing that on a small scale. And so as I trudge through the world, you know, I realize that, you know, if you can give people a little moment in their day where they're like, yo, like, man, I mean, it's been a hard day for everybody. And you're just right here and you're like, man, I really do fuck with the vibes. Like, gosh, isn't that a valuable totem to have in your life?
Cultivators, Under Canopy Lighting is changing the game. And with that, Faven Under Canopy Lighting. They're one of our premier sponsors, and it's a brand we truly believe in. If you want to check out favenlighting.com, you can get all the answers to what Under Canopy is and is how it's changing the game. And guess what? You're family. So we hook you up. The code is FSOTD, and you get hooked up with Faven Lighting. They put together a full layout of how you would set your facility or grow room up using their Under Canopy canopy lighting. Whether you're using CMH, double-ended, fluorescents, LEDs, it doesn't matter. Faven Lighting has you covered. Go to favenlighting.com, use the code FSOTD, get hooked up, and change your grow game. Come on, cultivators.
Bro, it's the anchor for some people. It's the stability in some people. It's maybe the only stability in some people's lives is that minute they get back to go home and they get to decompress is what I like to call it sometimes
100%.
and be like, man, you know, life comes at you in so many different ways and some stuff you have no control over. That's something you can control.
Yes.
And you can, you know, stimulate yourself or stimulate yourself in a way that for me is like the most natural thing that you could do versus drinking and all the other stuff that people do, especially these days with everything going on.
100%.
This though is such a unique, wanted to ask about this with the art piece. You have found your lane, and anytime I see I know immediately that's Karmaglass, but besides that, what's changed drastically for glass blowers from like, let's say 10 to 15 years ago to now? Is it a completely different industry?
100%.
Because I parallel it to, I'm guessing, the music industry.
100%.
You know what I'm saying?
Things are shifting, things are changing, and it's one of those things that reminds me of the Darwin quote. It's like the strong will survive, but he wasn't talking about the strongest like this. He's talking about the strongest adaptability, people who are most willing to change, you know? And one thing that I've really noticed is that, you know, glass used to be such a standalone thing. It wasn't being mimicked by foreign companies and stuff. I mean, it was, but it's just gotten so out of hand where we used to look to those foreign companies as the people who were going to come and take from us, you know, and really disadvantage us. Now that's coming from Florida. That's coming from Minnesota. You know what I mean? Like these younger companies that don't have the respect and don't have. And so as that fades away and as glass shows in general fade away, like we used to have some standalone glass trade shows that just simply don't exist anymore, you know, that have just gone away. And so the way that I liken it is to, glass is this great big bonfire. It's this great big council fire that we all like to gather around. You know, it's this scene. And the fire got so big. We used to ask glass artists come and chuck logs on the fire. We used to really put skin in the game in a way that we were so excited to bleed. You know, we didn't have the children. We didn't have, you know, we were all fledgling. And so we were like the metal band in the basement, you know, or in the garage, you know? And so we were willing to just go show up and rock, you know? And so as we chucked those logs onto the council fire, I like to say that some other people came around and started to take those logs or to create other fires. And so as we stood on the great hillside, you'd see these shops and galleries and other glass blowers and going abroad and all these, you'd look out on the hillside and there's all these fires burning. And you know, it's like, wow, okay, the scene is really pumping, you know? And I say that like maybe over the last couple of years, you know, and for some people, the fade out has been over the last 5 years. Some people, they've only felt it, you know, the last couple of years, last year, but everyone's felt the change, you know? And as that great change has occurred, I look out onto the hillside and the fires are gone. I look out, I go, wait, there used to be a fire burning over there. And hey, there used to be a fire. And now it's my decision is, you know, do these arms like to chuck logs onto the fire? And they do. You know, and that's the thing, they fucking do. And so it's one of those things where, man, like I am so unemployable, Lance. It's incredible. Like I would rather work 85 hours a week for myself so I don't have to work 40 for someone else because, man, I've got so much time and energy invested and I know this is what I'm here to do.
Yeah.
This is the plate that I'm going to serve the ministry on. This rainbow plate is how I connect with other human beings. It's how I bring them solace, you know.
Impact on the world, something you can leave behind.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Tie-dye, psychedelic reminder that we are all one. I mean, everyone's favorite color's in there. Like, come on, man. Like I don't care what your favorite color, it's in there, bro. And like, you know, I've had so many cats that walk such a different lifestyle and they're like, bro, I would never smoke a rainbow, nothing, but I'm going to tell you something, Karma. You, your tribe, the vibe, I'm in, it's working, you know? And so it's like, you know, if I can be here, to leave a little rainbow streak in my wake, it's like then I get to somewhat honor the lineage that I come from, the KRS Ones, the Atmospheres, the Steve Irwins, the Mr. Rogers, the Bob Ross, the Bob Marleys, the cats who fucking gave themselves up and did things that made them uncomfortable, travel, putting themselves outside the box. And so that's what I feel like now is the time to step outside of the already established order and to chuck logs on the council fire and to call your tribe in to remind them of why we do this. Because ultimately, man, we're being shown not only with glass, but with other great scenes and commodities that if we don't nurture, if we don't blow on the coals, they will go away.
Yeah, I think we're in the same position as smokers, as cannabis lovers. I think we're in the same exact position, man. And it's like I said in the beginning, I think we're tied to the hip and so many things parallel, right? We're going through this cultural wave. The Instagram change was a revolution, I'm sure, for glass blowing. What about Chihuly? Chihuly, I know I'm probably saying it wrong.
No. I'm just glad you brought him up because I was going to bring him up earlier when you brought up the mothership, because it's like, the one cat in the industry that we can think of that's orchestrating all these glass blowers. That's what Chihuly does, and he has a group of cohorts that he just knows. He has the vision. And of course, he's got a skill set that he could apply to the glass, but he knows his major skill set is he can navigate an orchestra. He can conduct an orchestra.
And just like you, branded.
Yep.
Just like these top guys, like Darby, everyone WJC, on and on, Sweater Kingpin. We can go on and on. I'm fans of so many of them. Marble Slinger, another one. But they have a branding, and it's so cool to see because with him, anytime I go like this and I look up and I see that chandelier with all the different horns that are every different color, I don't care where I am in the world. All I think about is that name. It doesn't matter who blew that. That's a Chihuly.
That's right.
And I think that's such a different path for an artist to go in who's a glass blower because you don't see it as much. Did he break open a lot of barriers for glass blowers or no? I'm just wondering because I see I forget his name, but Alex out of Colorado, Ubatuba, also goes and does these crazy sculptures. And I see them some guys love this. Obviously, that's how they made their, but then they go in different directions. And
Yep.
What do you think drives that? Is it just them progression as an artist?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's just, pushing the boundaries and it's like once you've made all the different pipe forms, like what can we do to bring this out and push this barrier? And, one thing I know Alex is passionate about, and he's a dear friend of mine. He's such a talented artist, man. And he is all about pushing things, the glass into other mediums. He makes a lot of jewelry, makes a lot of sculpture. And, I think it takes those that push outside the pipe market because alas, glass has been a medium that has, been valid and been enjoyed for years. The thing that is different is the fact that it's borosilicate and that it is, in a pipe form. But that being said, I would be hard pressed to see how Chihuly hasn't opened doors, right? Because, even if we can't observe that readily, within our small microcosm, the glass pipe scene, everyone knows what Chihuly is. You've been to a garden or something somewhere. And, the day that, I think what we're dealing with ultimately is a bunch of old guard with cannabis. Like we are going to be the ones in charge in the next 20 years. We're finally the ones that get to make the rules, and it's like everyone else who said anything else will be passed away, and that's just that's the nature of it. It's like every generation will get their turn. And so I would think that as cannabis continues to be more and more accepted, we've just seen that bizarre scheduling, it's like obviously soon as Pfizer can get their farms figured out, you know what I mean? We're going to be flipping the script. So it's like, obviously with these great shifts, hopefully that brings in a little bit of a lightening up. And then some of these glass artists like Alex and like, these bigger, sculpture artists can express in a way that we get to put things into prestigious places because ultimately we have the capability and we deserve it,
why wouldn't there be one in the White House? That would, you know what I'm saying?
That's
Or
exactly
some
it.
versions of things like this. Like, let's break it into, you know, you're in Parliament in the UK, and yeah, the chandelier is the top UK glassblowers that put it together and did something cool for. I don't even know if that'd be something they'd want to do, but it's just, I love that thought of like keeping breaking bounds, because it opens doors for the guys behind you and the guys next to you. I just love that, man. It's cool.
Yeah.
Who were your mentors? Did you have a couple guys who were like, Karma, here, let me show you the ropes?
Yep. I mean, early on, I would say that, you know, they became more and more notable, you know, as time went on, because the early guys that taught me, no one would ever know, but they are absolute true and awesome human beings. That my first guy that ever got me into glassblowing was a dude named Bob Byers, and he's in Mebane, North Carolina. And he was somebody who, I was a veterinary technician for 7 years. And so I was in the veterinary technician field, and I was selling flats of glass at Widespread Panic, Fish, and Grateful Dead shows just for fun, and just to have something to have legally so that I could sell my herb, you know, and the herb that I was growing. And so
Hey, you like that pipe? You want to fill it?
That's right. That's exactly it, you know. But then as Johnny Law comes around, I'm just selling pipes, you know. And so it's one of those things that, as I was running into with my at the vet hospital, they had a drug test that went, you know, hospital wide, and I kind of popped my head into the doctor's office, and I was like, "Hey, everything, only herb is the only thing I'm going to fail on. You know, everything else we're good." And he's like, "What?" And he was like so clueless to my herb use. I'm like, "Man, listen, I'm not a bad guy like that."
Yeah.
And he wanted me to go to inpatient rehab, so I was kind of in toil. And Bob Byers, I was buying his glass, and I called him, and I was like, "Man, I don't know what to do." And he's like, "Man, you're a glass blower." He's like, "You don't know this, but you're a glass blower." And so I was like, you know what, let's give this a shot, you know? And so I actually ended up cashing in my 401k. I had like 2 weeks of vacation, and I was just like, I'm going to run at this, you know? And I did it in a way that might have been a little bit different from other glass artists, because I was a professional already. And so I was going to approach this from a professional way. Spreadsheets were pulled out, you know, numbers were crunched. And I was like, okay, if I do this way. And so I went up with Bob and learned. And then as I grasped onto it, I said, you know what, I'm going to make this a full-fledged career. And I did go to another animal hospital, and I worked there for about 6 months just to make sure I had something going. And then,
what was the hardest part in that beginning?
Man, the hardest part in the beginning is just, I think, the jump. I think it really is, man. You know, the hardest part is just to say, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to actually buy the equipment. I'm going to actually do it. And, you know, you got to have some sort of almost psychotic belief in yourself. You know, you really do, because it's so easy to look at all the things on paper that might not work, you know, and that might, the needles you might not thread, you know? And so,
well, and even just starting to thinking like, hey man, I'm really not going to be able to do what I want for another 10 years or 5 years, but you don't know that. We go.
Oh gosh. Yeah. What a leap, you know?
And like, I need to meet people. There's so many hurdles, like you said, of stuff where it's like, oh, well, once I meet this person, then that door opens. And then once I meet, you know, someone who's going to buy all this art, when you're asking Bob these questions and you're kind of like, is he like trust the system, or is he like, this is what you do, this is what we're going to do?
You know what? He had a pretty solid plan of how he was able to feed his family and earn for his family.
Yeah.
But looking back, it was like not well planned, because his wife was a speech therapist, and they had a steady income. You know what I mean? And then he was blowing glass at night. So like, I saw this magical system, you know, and I didn't have kids yet. And I'm like, oh, this is great. Like, you can just blow glass in your shed, you know? And his main outlet had a distributor, and then he would go to Fish Lot, and he would sell his pipes on Fish Lot. So like right there, I should have known that, like, okay, this is going to be a rocky path, you know? And, you know, I love live music so much, and it's done so much for me that I didn't mind it. I'm like, okay, I don't mind getting dirty. You know, and so after about a year of blowing glass and taking his tips over the phone and taking a couple in-person classes with him, I was going up to Asheville, North Carolina from Atlanta, where I was living, and they had a main supply warehouse. You know, and that glass supply warehouse was a place that I could go to, get some supplies, and I would have other glass blowers there in line. I'm like, hey, how do you do this? What do you do? You know, and those guys were welcoming. They were like, hey, this is what we do. And so I was able to run into a guy up there named Shane Smith. And Shane Smith is kind of like our, in Asheville and in the Southeast, he's kind of our local legend. You know, he doesn't, you know, he's got dreadlocks, you know, he's a true dirt twirling hippie. Mm-hmm. But I always say that like Shane's dreadlocks are not Rasta locks, man. Those are punk dreads, you know? And he's like, doesn't have an Instagram, doesn't care, but makes wild things that are super awesome. And ultimately, man, just was when I pulled up into Asheville, based on vibe alone, he gave me a shot. And he was like, and a lot of people didn't, you know, a lot of people were welcoming, but didn't want to give up the sauce, you know, and didn't want me in the studio. And so Shane was one of those guys, hey, you can come around. You're welcome around me, man.
Shout out to you, man, because it takes a certain type of person to want to take away from their time with whatever they're doing, because it's going to take effort. It's going to take time. Friendship takes time.
Gosh.
So does especially mentorship.
Yes.
I always want to salute people that do that, because there's a special type of person that does that. Because after you get to in your 40s and 50s, you realize 7 out of 10 people will just say yes and not do it because they know what comes with it. And some people on their path have been burned or don't want to do it or haven't got there yet. And so it does take a special type of person at a special time in their life to go, yeah, man, hold on, let me open this door for you. Even if it's only what I can do here, man. Yeah, I love that. 100%. Shout out to you, bro.
Yeah, man, it's a blessing, man. And like, that's one thing that I try to never forget, that as I've gone into the pantheon of the glass scene and opened more and more doors, it's kind of like the rule at a Grateful Dead show. You don't sneak in the back door unless you leave it cracked for the next guy, you know? Like and that. So it's one of those things that like, you know, it's very important for me to do, because we all are here because someone gave us a chance in some capacity or another. All of us. There's no exceptions. Mm-hmm. Everyone got a chance. Some people it was their daddy. Some people it was their best friend. Some people it was their mom's next door neighbor used to mow his lawn. Everyone's been gifted grace. And so, yeah, man, as time went on, I kind of went without, as me and him, you know, I'm growing and doing my thing. He's doing his thing. I would say that my next and probably final mentor came in Banjo. Man, he's one of the cats, took me under his wing. You know, as we got connected, you know, there's a lot of gap between me and him, you know, in how long he's been blowing glass and in how much knowledge he has. And just, you know, he's a father of 6. I'm a father of 3. There's a gap in that. You know what I mean? He knows more than me in a lot of ways. And so, you know, he was a cat who, like, you know, I never would, like, as somebody who collaborates a lot, you would think that like I'm just thick with everybody. But like as I move through space and time, don't really it's kind of like how I was in high school, where, you know, I kind of sat at all the lunch tables. You know, I was over here with my brother, was a super nerd, and I went over and sat with him. And then I had the homies that I was selling herb to that were like the skaters and were more the Jim Morrison, you know, fan. And then I was a wrestler. I was always on the wrestling team and pretty athletic, but had a couple of low key guys I puffed with there, and then a couple of the jocks. So I was bouncing around the popular, all the tables, you know, but that creates a thing where there's really maybe not a squad. You know what I mean? There's really maybe not like a, you know, this is my homie, this is my, and so as space and time move forward, Banjo, I wouldn't have think it would have been him, but of all people, that's the homie, man. And he's definitely, you know, talking about open doors or talking about looking out for you. You know, there's been a number of times where he's either, you know, gently guided me here, smacked me on the back of the head and told me, hey, you know, get over here. And so, you know, I know
he's the rig where the person's like this,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Man. For everyone, if you're listening, get on YouTube. Come on.
Yeah. Let's go.
But yeah, because we're going to overlay all this. If you're listening and you're on Spotify, you've seen it because we're on video Spotify. But if you're on Apple, man, get on the other because we're going to overlay a bunch of your art.
You got to check it out.
Again, anytime I see that figure, and I'm not sure what he calls her. Is it a her?
Yep. Yeah. It's a female form he calls the Devi.
The Devi.
Yeah.
And it's literally almost like in mantra position.
Yep. It's like a goddess form that's sitting in lotus.
There you go.
Yep.
And man, when you see just the eyes and the artistic details, and it's something that no matter who he collabs with, you go, oh, yep, there it is.
100%, man.
Yeah.
And you know, that's the thing, is that, you know, glass artist is a powerful term. It's a powerful moniker to use that I think that gets thrown around like we're all artists. But alas, like when you make art, it's got to make you feel something. Art should make you feel something. You can despise it. You can enjoy it. It can bring peace. It can bring thought, concepts, and constructs, but it should make the human feel, right?
I love that.
One thing I love about Banjo is like the one reason I think we're attached is because he's one of the cats that was clear to me, and one of the few cats that was trying to imbue the glass as a structure with something more than just function and something more than just glitz and glamour and pretty colors, and prettiness, and that's the thing, like cats like Banjo, cats like Pinky Brutes, these guys are telling a story, you know what I mean? And they're trying to get you to where like a lot of other glass maybe will speed your mind up and it's like, whoa. And it's got you like really reveling. And the technique is just, I feel like some of these artists, like these guys, like my homeboys, they're and like what I'm trying to do, even though I'm a very distilled form, I'm trying to make you think, trying to slow down. And a lot of times my psychedelic, expression is a reflection back to me and what I say and what I emote. But at the end of the day, like that's a main goal, is to try to make people feel something. And so I honor that Debbie expression because it's not just a cool thing. It's trying to slow you down and it's trying to make you think about the life experience as a whole.
First Smoke family, no matter the guest, we're rocking raw and Elements papers. Whether it's the Elements king size wide, the raw fatties without the crease, so you still get the king size wide, but with unbleached and uncreased. Something we've been loving on the show is the raw king size blacks. And when we're lighting up, the Phoenix. This is awesome. Flintless residue, windscreen with a poker. No matter what products you like from Raw, you can check out genuineraw.com, and that gets you to all their affiliate links to purchase these products direct from them to make sure they're raw authentic. Genuineraw.com. First Smoke of the Day sent you.
Have you ever been around a glass blower where you've just felt like, oh, this person, their brain works different, or this is just a different level of, and I feel like that about certain growers where they just take on this life's mission, and I'll be like, next thing you know, he's a master electrician, master plumber, has a GC journeyman's license, is a grower, and does high-end cabinetry woodworking. And you're like, Jesus, bro.
Yes.
Like mastered the techniques to get to the position of being one of the best growers ever.
Yes.
There are certain guys where you just have to look at, yeah,
100%.
who's that?
More often than not, because all of us are on the spectrum in some way. You know what I mean? Like we're all guys that like, we were not the popular kids in high school. We were the guys who did a lot of thinking. We had erector sets when we were kids. You know what I mean? And so it's like, different degrees to different people. But man, at the end of the day, like the higher the expression, usually the quirkier they get. And
those are my favorite people.
That's, you know what I mean? Like that's all I care to hang out with is people who have put intention into their lives and tried to imbue their lives with a deeper meaning, because there's so much that we can just sit here and we can just, not think, and we cannot experience. So, these guys, all these guys, it's hard to say one versus the other. My man Eugene is definitely one of those guys who's like in his own rabbit hole, and he's very much like tinkering all the time, and I'm very I'm very impressed and continually humbled by how he can layer that technique, you know what I mean? But yeah, it's definitely you realize that learning how to learn is a mastery, and learning how to learn is something that is a huge tool that a lot of people don't put in their toolkit. So like when you see the guy who's like, the woodworking and the thing, it's like, oh, wow, he's actually not learning necessarily one discipline. He's learning how to be a Renaissance man. And so that's kind of like, one of the coolest, thought constructs to me of expression is the Renaissance man. Who's not only a good glass blower, he's a good dad. He's a good friend.
Yes.
He's a good poet. He can write a hip hop. You put a beat on, and get silly. And so that's the thing is like,
because they all work together.
That's it. They're all together. And like, there was a guy in the 15th century, Leon Battiste Alberti, and he was a judge. He was a scholar, a poet. He was a philosopher, and he was a farmer and he had so many of these disciplines. But one of the coolest things that I think he learned to do was they say that he could stand in front of a man and jump directly over his head. And it took him 3 years to learn that, how to do that. But he trained his muscles and learned how to do it. And he said it wasn't in the muscles and it wasn't in the body. It was all in the mind. And it was just training himself how to do that. And
wow.
So it's
trippy.
like, yeah, when you think about, what's possible, it's like we really do, we do limit ourselves based on thought constructs, And so it's like, if we can conceive it and believe it, I do believe like we can achieve it,
Yeah, it's the same when they say when people run races and they break like the 8-minute mile or the 5-minute mile, the 4-minute, and next thing you know, people are like, now everyone can do it. It's like, hasn't been done. Did you ever get to work with Contrabasso?
No, I did not. Rest in peace, Eli, man. Rest in peace. I never even got to meet him, man.
One of my favorite glass blowers from just watching, I have like my realm of 15 or 20 that I like watching. He was one of the top ones where I always told myself, if I get a fat check, I'm going to get a Contrabasso. I loved the recycler, or I guess
the hyper.
The hyper, man, just really different. Again, I love when you certain glass blowers that you just see these functions where you go like, damn, does that? And then when the function works, it's not just for show.
He's like, he's one of these ones that's was a true alien, was a gray star dimension with some really tripped out ideas, and
unbelievable work.
It's immaculate. And there's so many people now that you see in his wake, stacking Millefory tiles is now just a thing that you do, and there's people that do it really cleanly, but it's like, I always will know that, Eli was the first one to do it and he was the one to do it proper, and so it's like, it's interesting. Like when you see cats like Eli, he made me like, when I first came across Contrabasso, he almost made me want to quit. I was just like, it ain't going to get no cooler than this. You know what I mean? And then as a human, like I never met him, but like I'd always be on the tails of him in a studio, or, I have a lot of dear friends who were dear friends with him. And it's like, they can almost, even before he passed, they could almost bring him into the room with the stories. Like he's such a bigger than life character, And so, I think that this is a stark reminder to our community that time is a precious thing and that we are all here only for a little while, and that we got to appreciate everybody and everything while we're here. I used to say that I was curious who would be one of the first of the notable ones of us to go, and that I knew that I'm on that ballot too, and that, it reminds me when it's like there's like the Chief Tecumseh quote where it's like, keep death in your pocket so that, and prepare your death song, so that when you go over the great waterfall, you don't look back and wonder, what would I have done with this time that I had, And so it's very important to me to be conscious of like, Eli's passing and all of our passings, that we keep it right here and locked, because you know what, man, like I got a haka-hoy, man, I'm ready. And you know what, man, I'm not going to look back and say like, what if I did a little bit more? And so, like we've got to use these powerful moments where we reflect back and we go, you know what, the great teacher of glass, it's an impermanent medium. How many rigs have you broken? How many that you were saying to me, if I could have one back, right?
I can picture it in my head right now.
But it's like, this is our grandparents right now. This is our parents right now. This is our kids. It's like, bro, we got to love them and love them so fucking tough that we suck the marrow out of the bone of life. And we look back and we go, you know what? Oh, it's devastating that he or she passed, but you know what? I fucking loved them while they were here. I told them. I picked up the phone when I thought about it. I was like, bro, I fucking love you,
Yeah.
And like the more we can use these little moments and these little brushes on the Grim Reaper to remind us that we're all headed to Jabalba. We're all headed to the great underworld to be reborn in a star. We don't know where we go, but we know right now this little illusion, this feels real, and so we can grasp onto it and we can affect change while we're here,
Yeah. It is so true, man. And as you start to creep over that 30, 40s, you really, because you start to have friends like that where you watch and you go, oh man, no, but I have a friend who every time something happens in cannabis, I always want to be like, dude, how crazy is that? He was one of the guys we were originally talking about podcasting together, like even before, and he actually has a few episodes and then got killed. And it's crazy because he's one of the only ones when I got older in life where I will go like, something will happen and you'll want to tell them about something.
Still want to text.
And you'll be like, hey, bro, remember the new strain about the, yeah. And that's what I think when you get in your 40s, you start to realize like, okay, like when I saw you and you're like, dude, woke up, great day. And I'm like, yeah, you're so right about that.
People ask me, how do you grow it like this? How does it stay consistent? First of all, HGV produces a consistent product. If it wasn't consistent, would I have consistent flower, consistent harvest? Probably not.
It creates good consistency, high yield, and high terpene levels. It allows us to fully express the characteristics in our phenos.
I've been running HGV for a long time. Cleanest salt line that I've had.
As soon as we made the switch, the instant thing we seen was the clarity of our tanks.
I've been doing HGV for 7 years. Haven't had one clogged dripper due to the nutrient.
I can call HGV during the day, at night. Shout out to Nick for answering our calls like whenever.
They're efficient, they're friendly, they're a good company, and we really enjoy working with them.
I use HGV from veg, even on our clones. I use HGV for everything. I even sprinkle it on my steak.
As far as function, and you see people, we see the ball rig. The ball rig was something that I thought just changed the game.
Classic.
Is that Mothership?
Yep.
They created the ball
100%.
rig. Man, that is such an iconic, like you see it and it just functions so well. As far as functionality versus artistic touch, how do you balance that?
You know, it's a fun puzzle to balance, you know, because there's plenty of times that as artists, we've gone too hard in the artistic realm and then the function tends to suffer, you know? And so that's things we've learned from where, I remember one time I pulled up to a sesh and there was a piece going around and someone's like, hey, don't hit her too hard, man. She's a bibbler. She's a sipstress, or I'm sorry, that shout out Phil Siegel. He told me about the sipstress story, but yeah, it's like I was like a sipstress. He's like, yeah, we don't want to make a little sipstress. And so, that's something we've learned over time because what we do ultimately want is to push towards the art, but we want it to function right. We don't want someone to not use this vessel, because it's like, it's not my favorite thing to go to because it really doesn't work. And so that's something that we've had to really work through over space and time. And the thing that makes it extra difficult, if you think about smoking tobacco out of a pipe, how has that pipe changed? How has the calabash changed in 2,000 years? It hasn't. And so if you bring artistry to the calabash, it's a pretty straightforward process because you know the parameters. Whereas we have this hyper consumer culture that we're living in where the designs are changing by the day, the minute, the month, and so it's like, oh, wow, no, in-cyclers, they're out. This is in. Oh, we're not doing male joints anymore. We're doing female joints. Oh, no, actually what's going to happen now is we're doing mini rigs. So we want the perks facing down. Like, oh, no, we're doing recyclers and we want the water to come up to the recycling arm. So now actually flip the perk. Like it constantly changes. It's a constant dialogue with our collector bases. It's like.
And so as you as an artist, are you saying, okay, got to learn a new technique? Are you then collabing with them? Are you then, are you I'm just saying so sophisticated that you can look at someone's work and go, okay, they're doing this now. Let me try to work it. And then are you testing a rig and hitting it yourself? Or how does that process work when something's like a ground? Because also like, okay, you see someone do a groundbreaking technique. Does everyone just jump on it? Can they just jump on it? And if they do, are you testing the function? Like
right. Those are all great series of questions. Now, as far as testing it, absolutely. I can't think of a collector of mine to date that has spent thousands of dollars on a single piece of art and I was like, hey, you know what? I want to make sure because this isn't a tried and true design. I may have made mini rigs before, but this is a new perk you wanted. And it kind of, when I set the perk, it's not all the way to the base. It's kind of floating up, but I want to make sure there's no sipping. It feels good. I can't think of a collector that wouldn't be like, yo, rock it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like take her on a run, take her on
function.
It's just like, again, like high end luxury stuff. Like it'd just be like tuning a Ferrari's pipes and then being like, let me know if she sucks. Like, you know what I mean? You got to drive her around the parking lot, And so that there, as far as the technique, you know,
because someone does something and you say, holy shit, look how in demand their product is now.
Right. And
are you allowed to just step on toes?
Everything's fair in love and war, baby, And so like, that's what makes the Wild West of not only glass blowing, but like life, right? Like you come out with a product, you didn't get the IPO fucking, taken, you didn't get anything done with trademarking. You thought you were going to have 3 months to get it done. Oh, wow, look at this. Someone comes and, as they say on the Shark Tank, squashes you like a cockroach, right? Like, comes in, says, hey, I can do that. I work with Unilever. We'll get those produced, and so that's the thing. That's a very interesting thought construct because, like I said, we used to get, we say China, but the East or whoever, these different glass manufacturers, India, China, they don't care. They're on it tomorrow. So we've always expected that. But like I said, the knockoff is coming from, it's coming from East Kentucky. It's like coming from within now, so as I've gone from like nobody glassblower to a notable glassblower to cruising towards a legacy glassblower. As I work my way there, I realized that there are so many legacy names that have paved the road that I walk on. It would be downright disrespectful for me to work with anybody but the OGs. I don't care what kind of lamp you made looks great. I don't care what kind of thing. I don't care what kind of recycler. Like I'm trying to honor the lineage and stand to testify to the totem pole that exists, and work my way onto that totem pole, and so that is actually one of the ways that my collaborations have proliferated. The first half I got to give to the tribe of just being like, yo, you should do this. And me being like, yo, I don't know if and like shout out Nathan Belmont because Nathan Belmont is an amazing glassblower and he's like the first guy to say yes to work with me, Mr. Nobody in Obscurity, and like,
hell yeah.
And like these guys came in and said yes. And like, bro, like just because I can mimic their technique, like there's so many glassblowers I've worked with. I'm like, bro, I could knock that. But then, there's a lot of different things at play. Integrity, Harry Chapin. You ever heard of Harry Chapin?
The name sounds familiar.
A lot of people think that the guy who's saying, that song Cats in the Cradle?
Yes.
Okay. So a lot of people think that's Cat Stevens. Okay. And that's like a butterfly effect thing where like they, in a Time Life late night commercial, when they used to try to sell the Time Life music, they put Cat Stevens' name under it. But it was Cats in the Cradle is a song written by a singer-songwriter of the 1970s who passed away in 1972, Harry Chapin. Okay. And Harry Chapin was just like an amazing dude. Not only did he write Cats in the Cradle, but he has amazing, amazing catalog of awesome singer-songwriter songs. His grandfather was an illustrator. He was a painter. And he illustrated Robert Frost's first book of poetry ever. Okay. Back in the early 1900s. Okay. And he gave this advice to Harry Chapin of like, Harry, there's good tired and there's bad tired. And ironically, bad tired can be a day that you won. You got all the checks signed. You got all the everything cleared. Everything went your way. But when your head hits the pillow at night, it doesn't quite settle because there wasn't a whole lot of you in there. Wasn't a whole lot of what you wanted. And you won other people's victories and other people's goals. And strangely enough, a day that is good tired can be a day you lost. You lost it all. You lost it everything. But it was you and putting you and yourself into there. And so, you know what, Harry? I would have liked to have illustrated more poetry. I would have liked to have illustrated more things. But you know what? I've painted day in, I've painted day out, and I'm good tired, Harry, and they can take me away. And
wow.
And Harry Chapin said, I got goosebumps. Harry Chapin said, if he can look at that implacable wall of black and have any sense of peace and equanimity, I want in. I went in on that, And so it's
wow,
like,
look inward, do what feels right for you.
Well,
and then include others when you can, but make sure you're fulfilled, huh?
well, but also I speak to that to speak to integrity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what has my head hitting the pillow good at night, right? Is that I know that like at the end of the day, I was a winner, but I didn't win at someone else's expense. I didn't chop someone down. So all those hippie smatterings to bring back to tell you that like when someone else has hit me up, the other part of me getting out there, I believe, has been when someone has hit me up and said, hey, look at this design. Like, do you know how to make that design? Like, I was wondering, because I got quoted here, and could I get my thing is like, yo, I don't know that artist, but I know he's got a family. And I know that dude has worked really hard to be that dude. Instead of make me mimic him, why don't you put us together? And so like, bro, like so much of my path has been, it was going to be like someone tried to come in and get someone knocked off and was like, yo, can you knock this dude off? And so when I'm trying to find a humble but confident voice to speak to the copycats of the industry, because honestly, bro, like what I tell you up and coming glassblowers is like, bro, like when I see them doing some like decent copies, I'm like, bro, like you're in a Grateful Dead cover band. Like if you play Jerry Garcia music, people will show up. But when I see you flick the guitar like that, I know you can write a song. So I want to know what's in there that you could bring to the community dialogue to look back and say like, bro, we got you on the totem pole.
Bring the logs to the fire.
That's it.
Yeah.
To the council fire.
Yeah.
And so, man, like that's my whole path. It's not about like, I could easily knock so many people, and that could have been a real part of my path. You know what I mean? Like, and I got in a couple places where financially I almost considered it. Like, yo,
that's
like,
am
I gonna have to do this? And so that's where we have to remember as human beings that integrity and consciousness costs money. It is not easy to keep that head on that pillow in a good way. So if you want to, you got to be ready to lop off tens of thousands of dollars at different points in your career just to be able to just be like, yo, I did it, but I did it my way, bro. Frank Sinatra, man. Like we got to do it our way, dude.
Man, it's true, because that trade-off sometimes for cash is integrity. And that a lot of times that deal does come your way in life at different times. So that's such an interesting point, man, that you, I want to talk about where you're based out of and what it was like growing up in that area as a glassblower, because personally, I'm from the South as well. I know the South has, and I'll stand up and say it, some of the best cannabis growers in the whole world came from the South. You can call it North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, and Florida, that whole little the South. Some of the best guys, I've traveled the world, and I'm like, where are you from? When I find an impressive grower or someone, they're like, oh, dude, I'm from, and it's I'm like, dude, you're from Florida? A lot of times it's Florida, but then it goes the South. What was it like wanting to be into glass in an area where cannabis is illegal and still like not one of the coolest states with it? So it's like, what was that like?
Man, dude, that was definitely like a path, It was one where it was low key, and everything was labeled for tobacco use, and so everything had to be, obfuscated, hidden in that way,
Did you have to put wax over the third hole type?
Nope,
thing?
that was like one stage before,
okay.
But like we did invest into stickers early on that said for tobacco use only, and we stickered our products tobacco use only. One time there was an Operation Pipe Dreams that happened,
I was there for that.
Yep. And so, and I did have a sheriff's. I ended up finding that like I had this weird interaction on Etsy early on for a bong slide. And the guy was giving me weird. He was wanting me to he wanted to send a money order. He wanted my original name. He wanted some things that were making me uncomfortable. And so I said to him, I'm like, what's the address again? And I looked up the address, and like the first thing when I just Googled the address was it was going to be in a sheriff's auction in 2 weeks. So like 2 weeks from that time. So it was obviously owned by the sheriff's office. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like, so I felt it early on, in the path that there were like still wolves like sniffing around the teepee, wondering how they could just like take.
Can you imagine though? Like can you imagine people, they're of all the things in the world, a piece of glass that an artist spent time like just like, man, it speaks to just how backwards some of the shit in our society is, that's something to focus on for cannabis. Like that's absolutely retarded.
If they'll nip Tommy Chong for pipes, they'll nip us. You know what I mean? Like, who are we if they'll go after Tommy Chong? You know, and everyone like remembers the Chong bong, dude. Like, you know, getting a bong with Chong's Millie face on there, like that was legendary, you know? And so it's kind of fascinating, you know, and it really shows that, like, you know, I think that, you know, cannabis really liberates the mind, you know, and that's the thing that, you know, that's the thing that is the fear of cannabis for the powers that be, is that it just makes you think, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you think a little bit and you realize, wow, this is Babylon. This is a little confusing, this system we live in, you know what I mean? And so
you're in North Carolina though, and I know some people banging big operations there.
Oh, yeah.
A long time ago. And I know personally guys that were in North Carolina with literally 60 lights in bloom in basements. And I know this personally, like I'll speak to this because, and these guys, the only thing they have to spend money on is things like this. Are you in your come up meeting some of these crazy players along the way as they're like, hey man, what about a couple $1,000 rig? And you're like, oh shit.
You better believe it. Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely, man. Shout out to the crew in Asheville, man. Or as we like to call it, Hashville, baby. Let's go. Let's go.
I love that.
And man, you know, like it's funny, you know, as we've been able to get less and less low key, you know, it's funny because we're existing in that loophole that, you know, I think that it's fascinating because, you know, from the outside in, you know, it's like we're not getting the same outside packs, you know, and so everyone's like, everyone's down on it, but ultimately it represents freedom for us. And this THCA loophole is funny because I was down on it for forever. I was like, what is this THCA? Like, I smoke flower. You know what I mean? What are we doing here? But as I realized exactly what it represented and the fact that it was actually just flower and that it wasn't anything different, I was like, let's go to work. And so that was something that really brought a lot of change to our area. But up until 2018 with that hemp farm bill, things have just been so slow. And so, and in Asheville, marijuana is decriminalized. So, you know, it's like cannabis is not a thing. You get a traffic ticket, but you go outside of that and it's a lot, you know? And so,
man, that's I don't think we ever hear that side of it, bro, is the good side of that hemp getting more freedom.
Oh my God.
Because we all hear like, oh, this is bullshit. No one wants to smoke hemp. And you're going, no, it's more freedom. Are you voting for more freedom or less freedom?
And now, and now that the loophole is going to be snatched anyway, I'll just say it. The way that things happen is that within the first 2 weeks of flowering, those buds at the very bottom get tested. I mean, what we're doing is we are operating under a clear loophole. And so it's like one of those things where I know people don't understand it, but it is just freedom for the Carolinas and for the Southeast. And so that is something that we are all so grateful for because, you know, otherwise we'd have nothing, you know, and it's really hard to, you know, it's easy from the financial perspective to be like, man, we want our products to go here and here. But from a freedom perspective and from a consumer perspective, man, it sucks shopping on menus. It sucks shopping on menus, and then you get something, and if you buy in bulk, then you get something that you don't like for a long period of time, and it's just too much. You know what I mean? So it's like I remember coming out here and being able to go to dispensaries and living out here in Carson for about 6 months back in 2007 and going to like Little Amsterdam dispensary and seeing Judah over there. And like, bro, my world was changed. I was like, oh, I'm a civilized human being. I'm not a criminal. I'm not like, and so that energy was brought to the Southeast. And that's what that bill really represents to us is like, man, you know, you can feel like a civilized human and consume the plant like you want to, you know, so.
Crazy, bro.
Yeah. It's
I think like Carson's like the bank robbing capital of the world, I think.
Yeah, I tell you what, it's like between there and Lowell, Massachusetts. Like they go back and forth.
Crazy.
Yeah, that movie, The Town, remember
Yes.
with Ben Affleck and the FBI and stuff. It's like they go back and forth, Carson and Lowell.
Crazy.
And I've lived in both for short periods of time. Shout out to being in the trenches.
You're like, yeah, literally.
Shout out, man, because you know that's the thing. Like as an artist and as a connoisseur, we got to go into the places that suck, and then we got to make them cool so that you can make them expensive, and then we can go find find the next place that's like run down and make it cool again. You know, that's like our job, is to like breathe life into communities so that you can gentrify them as an artist, you know, because we'll go into the places like Detroit, we'll go into the places that suck and make them cool, and then bring people, because the collective and the energy is real. It's authentic. And that's the thing everyone's trying to capture is authenticity. And that's what we do as artists. We breed that, you know what I mean?
It is. I have two questions. One's a weird one, you might think. Have you ever been hired for like a super expensive crack pipe?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope, but I have.
I just think that's like, people are going to be like, what the fuck are you talking about?
No, but I will say that I have had, I did find out that people did, like, Southeast, meth consumption being a thing. One head shop owner did tell me that they had these like kind of tweakery homies come in, and they were like breaded down. They had like plenty of money, but they were like, we don't. And so they took their little crack pipe and then they put it in, they used the banger. Instead of putting hash in there, they just used the banger, and they were like, wow, this is a great little meth pipe.
And this is just,
so that's a pretty wild story. And that only happened once, but it's pretty funny.
And people are going to be like all upset or weird about that I asked that, but I just think that because I look at the art and I go, there's people with money and
there's got to be.
So you've had weird requests before, and that's where my mind went. Was
cocaine straws and all kinds of shit.
All kinds of crazy.
Bro, there has to be and like I can't be the only one. There has to be some other artist that like made a freebase pipe or some crazy
DMT,
shit.
on
something,
and on. And that's where my thought. One of the questions I had though is, because like the business side, my mind wanders to when artistry, because it's such a hard thing to take something that you love, that's a piece of art that you've spent time in, and then say, and now turn it right into business.
Right.
And that's something that I think a lot of artists end up having a representative that does that for them, especially in
100%.
Other fields of art,
100%.
because their attachment to how much they should be charging, so many factors of like the dickheads you got to deal with that kind of sometimes will disregard how much. And if you have some type of barrier there where that person isn't as attached that you are, how is it like dealing with these shops? Because you're dealing with all these galleries, and these galleries all have, I'm sure the requests and how much you have to put on the shelf is 50 grand, 40 grand, 30 grand.
Yeah.
And now you have 150 of these all over the country.
Yep.
Or let's say maybe 75 ones that pay their bills. What is it like having to deal with all these? Are they paying cash up? Are they on consignment? Or is it just, because I've done this in the clothing where you drop clothing off and then 2 weeks later you drive by to be like, yeah, they're not picking up their phone. And then you go like, oh, they're out of business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Holy shit.
So it's a shop by shop basis, and it's just like dealing with human beings, it's like, okay, is the guy behind this reliable? And then you have,
it's like weed.
Yeah. And then you realize that like these people start to get names in the industry because they are reliable. They are stand-up people. Their checks do cash, I always operate when I do a show, like I'll operate on the idea that I'll have about a $20,000 deposit, and then I'll have $20,000 after the show. So like a $40,000 engagement. A lot of times, because so much of my art is collaborative, I'm on about half of that, maybe sometimes less, maybe sometimes more, depending on what usually more, because I'm introducing solo stuff into the art, the scene as well. But like, that's usually the way that it happens. Now, that separates the wheat from the chaff. You know what I mean? A deposit like that, and I've had to do that because when you work with smaller shops, it usually like, if you don't do something significant financially to make you excited to do something, it's like not a very high incentive to like get screwy with a shop. It's got to be and one thing that in the cannabis space, like, so weed's always kept me a little immature. It's always kept me, fun, happy, laughing, and so like that immaturity bleeds into sometimes the financials. You see it in the black market where it's like, how many cats have a guy that they're fronting packs to, it's working out great, and then all of a sudden he runs off, and you're like, that guy would never run off, It's like that kind of lack of accountability is rampant, right, in the cannabis space. And so that also is rampant in the glass pipe space. And that's one of the reasons like I probably get half the shots that I do as well, is because I show up and I look people in the eye and I'm like, hey, if I mess this up, we're going to make it work. You know what I mean? And we're going to figure it out. But like, I'm not, it's like goes back to the saying, your word is your bond, and your word and your name's all you have. So it's like, you got to kind of create that not only in yourself, but then the people you work with.
Yeah.
And so the second I work with someone, they're going to get a little validation. So, you know what I mean? I want to make sure I'm working with the right people because there's going to be someone behind me that's going to try to work with these guys, or I'm behind somebody that I'm hitting up going like, hey, how are these guys to work with, type thing. But
what's your favorite thing I see you have a pendant on right now.
Yes.
And obviously you have this jar that you made is exceptional.
This is staying with you, Bubba.
I know, you're going to see it on set nonstop. You're going to see. I want to ask you, what's your favorite thing to make? Do you have something that you really enjoy making? Is it still functional glass, or is it something also where you're like, man, I so enjoy when I get a chance to do these, or I find myself just doing this in my free time?
Yeah, my trick answer is rainbows. But, honestly, it's changed over the years what I enjoy making. But I'm such a people person, and I'm such a, I believe that, these things, again, are such little personal totems. These are like little spirits that walk with you, like shout out Salt. He used to call them demons because in his path, he's like, these are little demons. That's why they have eyes and teeth. They're protecting you as you. And so like, these are little totems that like are so personal that as the trends change, you get into different parts of the process. Like, oh, it's enjoyable to make a joint for the piece, or it's enjoyable to figure out some function. And then you'll get into little paths of like, oh man, I got into where I was making these things and getting into function for a while. And some people stay there and then that's their thing, and they're like, that's what I enjoy. But me personally, if I'm able to elicit the responses that I've been getting over the last 5-6 years out of human beings, that's what I like to create. I like to create the thing that's fucking stoking up, because ultimately I'm not in this to be like, hey, will you make like a giraffe with this and like work with Matt Robertson, do that. It's like, I like to have I'm like a tattoo artist. Like you come to me, I'm going to ask for a little bit of creative freedom. I'm going to understand your vision, and I'm going to try to transmute it into something that represents the both of our visions. And if you don't walk out of that shop happy, it's free. You know what I mean? Like I don't want people, I don't want you coming home to a piece. I've refunded people. I've had people who paid $4-6 grand and then they're like, bro, this just ain't it. And I'm like, bro, here's the money. Send me it back. Nothing's wrong with it, right? You've only had it a couple days. Send me that thing back.
Someone else is going to be
someone else is going to be ecstatic, and we can parlay this into another piece down the line. You can come back to me with this energy, because ultimately it bums me out. Like to think of someone acquiring a high-end piece of art and then that bringing them anything but peace and joy.
Wow.
And
as an artist, you're like, I don't want that feeling to be associated with something I did with an art pizza.
No.
Wow. Very.
Dude, I've talked people,
I've
talked countless, not like one person, not two, I've got countless people off the ledge. Like, hey, my wife doesn't know. I've got this $4 grand put aside, and I'm like, and I go, hey man, how much you love that woman? And he's like, oh, the end of the earth, we got 2 kids together. And I'm like, man, not for nothing, but like, I don't think it's worth like living a single lifestyle and not being able to see your kids for a $4,000 pipe. And you're like, whoa, like do karma, like what the fuck? And I'm like, bro, like, yes, money is fucking tight and I'm going to make it. You better watch me, because I'm going to work my ass off, and money follows passion. It's proven. But I ain't going to do it at the behest of that. When you see that pipe, you're like, actually, what I really need to do is sell that motherfucker, because my wife's going to fucking kill me, bro. Like, I've talked people out of art, and so, it's important that these things weave they're to me, it's magic. What we're doing is magic. Gravity, heat, fire. I would have been hung by my toes and burned at the stake 150 years ago for doing this shit. Like literally, they'd be like, how'd you do that? And I tried to explain. They're like, kill him. Tie his hands behind his back and throw him in the river. He's fucking
You'd have
hippie.
been doing this in your free time and making swords for somebody during the day.
Straight up,
Crazy.
And so, yeah, man, like it's been a wild path to be able to walk through the gauntlet of coming up in the Southeast, still be able to experience the plant, and then be some sort of small bastion of the culture that like, I'm like, I'm representing for the hills of Asheville that have a legacy. We have a long, rich history of being like an East Coast Boulder, a hip little city that, you know that there's going to be some super fire coming out of, and so it's nice to represent that, and
is that only available at that level because of Instagram?
What only?
Where you're able, because like, you would think like, okay, if I want to get paid for my art at the level where you're seeing a lot of these top artists get paid
100%.
at, if you weren't in New York City, Miami, LA, San Francisco, or meccas for weed and growth, you're not getting those tickets.
Nope.
So then I go, okay, is the only way that an artist can live wherever they would like to live and still be able to put up expensive artists because of an online presence?
Yes, absolutely. And the growth of the community. Like some of the pricings have been dictated by the community's growth.
Yep.
Because like, for instance, when I first started, like my very first shows in 2019 and 2020, I had a pricing structure that I was trying to stick to that was based on a crafter's fee. It wasn't based on an artist's fee. It was based on time plus materials exclusively. You know what I mean? And so that crafter's fee, as I applied that to my art, that was taken advantage of. That was like, I would sell a piece for in a drop for $1,000. I'd see it 3 weeks later for 4,000, it'd immediately sell, you know? And so I watched that happen for a good 2 years before I said, you know what? Like I've got to start to price based on what other people see in me as well as what I see in myself. You know what I mean? And so it's dictated by a reflection from usually the collector base. Like I didn't just come in and be like, yo, this is what my art's worth. But then as it was established for me, and then as I was able to maintain that established order by rising to the occasion, it's one thing to make a piece and sell it but to maintain that for years on end, half a decade, a little bit more. It's like all the traveling and people rubbing up on me and realizing like, whoa, this is a real human being that like I can touch and feel like this guy and meet my kids. Like, this is the first year I've traveled without my family. They're homeschooled. So we were like the Partridge Family, you know, like my kids have seen the Grand Canyon, the Seattle Space Needle. We've collaborated, made glass art in 32 different states. Like we've had shows or drops in 14 different states, you know?
Wow, man.
So like, you know, and like I'd fly my dad out. My dad's been to every show I've ever had. My 65-year-old dad is now 70. He's like, you know, he'll be downstairs womping dabs, and the tribe will come to me and be like, yo, Karma, who's downstairs? Like an older man that's like womping hash rosin. And I'm like, does he have a vibe saver on? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, that's my father. And they're like, whoa, Karma. Like, okay, you get it honest. Like, let's go, you know? And so it's a family affair, man, you know? And, you know, that's what I aim to bring. Speaking of throwing logs on the council fire and stuff, you know, it's like, that's what I aim to bring. I'm coming back out here. I'm coming to Malibu in March. From March 20th to the 22nd, Prismatic. So official show announcement vibe here, you know, and
anyone coming to LA, come on, man.
Let's go. We got tickets right now. We've got a couple of tiers of tickets available, where the first tier is an entry into the glass show, and we're going to be serving gourmet food all night. So it comes with the gourmet food, of course. And then we're going to be having not only the first availability to get my glass, but that ticket fee comes, that $150 ticket comes with $50 of that ticket goes towards the purchase at the show.
Oh,
so, you know, it's kind of like a
no-brainer
built into that. And then we have a $300 ticket, which on Friday night, we're going to be having Chef Wendy Z come out, and she's going to be serving, we're doing Terps and Tapas, a 4-flight tapas and terp tasting with some of my favorite, you know, I knew that there's so much fire hash rosin, but I wanted the tribe to have an example of my favorite terps. So we've got Baked Taters coming out. She's been an award winner and she's been a dear friend of mine. We've got Divine Melts coming out. So, and Divine, I think, is going to hold off on submitting to a few different shows leading up. And he's going to make his drop available for the tribe exclusively at that show. So we've got Divine Melts coming in strong. We've got Meltiplex, who that's a dark horse in the race, man. He's coming around. He won 3rd place out at Melt Masters out in Vegas. And he has only been doing this for about a year. And he is just absolutely dialed and he wants it bad. So we're,
I love newbies.
He had some great
Yeah.
flavor, and it was just so impressive. And then last but certainly not least, my favorite jar of 2025 was some grape jet fuel by Who's Who Hash. And they, man, and I'm telling you right now, man, I can't get enough of it, man. I was on the Terpene Therapy podcast, and, you know, I was able to sample it there, and let's just safe to say I'm stoked that it's going to be at the show. So yeah, man, can't wait.
And so when is the show?
It's March 20th 21st and 22nd, and it's out in Malibu, out on a property we've got. It's a 5-acre property with an in-ground saltwater pool. It's got a yoga deck. We're going to be having on Sunday of that event, we're going to be having a pop-up hash market and sesh. So everyone who's scooped a piece, bring your piece. Know that we're going to have a bunch of different vendors there, and that we're going to be having a bunch of hash available. So
Fire,
Sunday's a chill day. You know what I mean? So it's a three-day weekend for anyone that wants to come out, man.
And then how do they, like, because there's going to be a bunch of people that are like, dude, I'll come out to LA just for that.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, is it on karmaglass.com? Where do you get tickets? How do you?
Yeah. So if you shoot me, I'm one of the most responsive social media artists that you'll probably come in contact with. You can shoot me a DM, and I also have a link in my bio where it jumps you straight to the tickets. So
at Karmaglass.
Yep. At Karmaglass 420 on Instagram.
There you go. At Karmaglass 420, and we'll link it. You'll see it in the description. I say we take a dab, and then, man, I've had such a blast with Karma, bro. I'm so glad we were able to do this and sit down and talk about the state of the glass industry and be able to give homage to so many badass glass blowers. And we're going to overlay visuals on this. It's been really our pleasure to be able to shine light on so many players in this industry that we just all look up to, and that we've wondered what their story was or what they're like on, when you get to sit down for 2 hours and chop it up. And like, man, it's been a pleasure to sit with Karma. One of my favorite aspects about what we do is the cool things like the glass industry of cannabis, where the art really shines, and it's this whole other industry that's thriving. And we're tied at the hip. And like Karma and I spoke about, when the weed industry is booming, so is the glass industry. And so, man, I'm just excited to boom together. What's coming up next? Where do we go from here? We saw us go from flower rigs predominantly straight into these spoon hash rigs, and then now we got dab rigs. I do want to end with one thing that I almost forgot to ask you, but where are we going from here? Two things. What do you think electronic devices has done for glass blowers? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is it a neutral thing? And then also, where do you think we're going from here?
Okay. So with the electronic rigs, I think it's hard to say what that does to glass, because it's definitely an option that represents the youth culture that is plugged into anything Bluetooth, anything electronic, anything that, connects you to the matrix, as it were. And so it's hard to say, but one thing that I think that the electronic rigs are really lacking, and that is going to be their kind of, it's like the Turing test, right? Where they say AI is not AI when you can't tell. Well, those rigs will be more and more valuable to me as a glassblower when I can take a dab from one.
Like that.
Yes.
Yeah, like you're about to.
Because ultimately, man, like they're nice. They fill a purpose and they fill a place. And I'm grateful that those companies have consciously tried to at least include glass in some aspect. There's no reason they had to do that. That being said, I just feel like I'm such a purist, and I'm such a, I'm 40 years old. I've been taking dabs now since 2009 religiously. You know what I mean? And so it's something that's deep in my blood that I don't think that, like, even if we can connect to Bluetooth and do the exact right, I don't think that's going to make the difference for me personally,
Anyone who's dabbed knows that we used to always hear like, nah, I just need a real dab. And we knew what that meant. That means like, I need something out of a rig. There's just something special about out of a rig. Man, where do you think the industry's going for glass? Is it going to be functional? Is it going to be like, where do you think the new cats are going to take it after this torch is passed? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Man, I'm a little bit of an optimist, man. So I tend to see the silver lining. I tend to see what's possible, not what's not possible. And so my answer, even though it might be a little bit optimistic and corny, is there's nowhere to go but up. I think that these things come in cycles, and that we're in a great cycle, and that I've seen it. We've Operation Pipe Dreams, just aforementioned, we've seen the cycle. And so we're in a great cycle. And you know what I mean? It's like, my prediction is everybody who steps up, represents their own brand, and throws a log on the council fire, well, I'll see you around the fire.
I like that. I like that. Karmaglass 420, first smoke of the day. Man, if you haven't already, get on FSOTD.com, man. You're slacking. We do the behind the scenes. We do extra content. You get the drops early. I'm talking weeks in advance, all that good shit. So, man, this was a pleasure. I can't wait to be there. I'm for sure going to Malibu. I'll be there.
Let's go.
Hey, I'll see you guys there.
Yay.
Peace.
First Smoke family, if you want more video, unreleased content, stuff we can't put on YouTube, you want early drops, weeks and weeks in advance, FSOTD.com gets you all that. You become part of the family, you get hooked up with early content, you get unreleased content we can't put out on YouTube because we get age restricted and we get strikes, the whole deal. FSOTD.com gets you hooked up like family. But if you just want to keep watching, here we go. Let's let another one roll.